let's talk about Tyreek Hill. Absolutely
Man.
exploded against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which was a game that we had circled, and the Chiefs took it and ran with it. And Tyreek Hill, just like, what more can you even say? 269 yards, 13 receptions, 3 touchdowns. 269 yards is 7th highest in a game since the year 2000. And he's currently the wide receiver 1. So let's talk about Tyreek, his value from a dynasty perspective. For those of you who are in dynasty leagues, I think in the offseason we'll get into that. 2020 dynasty and redraft. What's the takeaway here on Tyreek Hill? Shouldn't we have all seen this coming?
I mean, we should have, but he put up 57.9 fantasy points in this game. Just for context, there's only, if you take the last 3 weeks combined, only 3 wide receivers have put up that many points in the last 3 weeks combined, and it's Justin Jefferson, Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams. Outside of that, Tyreek Hill literally would have been the wide receiver 4 over the last 3 weeks if he only played 1 game. So just an absolutely remarkable, historic game. But I think Tyreek Hill is the wide receiver 1 rest of season. I think, to me, he's actually the dynasty wide receiver 1.
Wow.
Because what he's been, I mean, I have to fault myself for not seeing it earlier. I mean, this far in the season, he's been very solid, very consistent. He's scored a lot of touchdowns, but we know the upside that Tyreek Hill has. Now, typically every single season, we'll have a game or two where he just kind of disappears. But this season, he's had that consistency because the touchdowns have been there. And this is the ceiling you talk about. I don't think there's another player in fantasy football that gives you the kind of ceiling that Tyreek Hill has. Like, think about this. If the Bucs would have stayed in this game, Tyreek Hill could have had a 4th touchdown. He could have had 350 yards in this game because the Chiefs just throttled it back, didn't have to do anything for the whole second half, and they were on cruise control. So, Tyreek Hill's tied to Patrick Mahomes. He's only 26 years old. He's the fastest player, in regards to field speed. He's the fastest player in the league based on the eye test. So, I don't know how. I mean, Devontae Adams is great. You and I are both big Devontae Adams fans. I think those 2 guys are 1-2. Now, Devontae's probably going to be a little bit more consistent typically over time, if you look at a huge sample size. But as far as the upside goes, you just can't beat what you're getting here from Tyreek Hill. And at the end of the day, you look at the quarterback spot, and there's no one better than Mahomes right now. So Tyreek Hill, for me, has got to be the number 1.
Going into drafts next year, I think Tyreek Hill is going to be right in that Julio Jones range, probably now and for the next couple years until we start to see a drop-off. And the fear with drafting Tyreek Hill at all, if there was a fear, was you're taking him back of the 1st, maybe early 2nd round, and just the fact that he was boom bust. And I think that fear can just be completely erased from our minds now because the floor has been incredibly high in 2020. He only has 1 game this year with less than 15 fantasy points.
Wow.
Last year he had only 5 games where he had more than 15 fantasy points on his way to finishing 12th in points per game. So last year it was much more boom bust. This year he's had an incredibly high floor and has had those pop games on top of it. And Tyreek is doing this at 26 years old. He's right at the peak of his production. The age apex for wide receivers is 26 to 27. And in Dynasty, I don't know if I'd have him at my wide receiver 1 like you do. I think that's a little bit of a hot take. I'm not going to debate you too hard, though, but he's comfortably in my top 5. Probably have him right there at 3 behind Devontae Adams and Michael Thomas. And then you got guys kind of breathing down his neck, the young guns, DK Metcalf, A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb. Then you got like DeAndre Hopkins and DJ Moore in there as well. But I think Tyreek is very sustainable. Like his production that he's putting up should continue year over year because I don't see the situation changing that much when he's tied to Mahomes, Andy Reid, and this Kansas City offense. And next year, there may be some regression, but the Chiefs are passing the ball a ton. And that's part of why Tyreek's floor has risen so much. Mahomes is 3rd in the league in pass attempts. The Chiefs are 8th in pass plays per game. And that's with them dominating teams on the way to a 10-1 record. And you look at the target share for Tyreek Hill. In 2019, it was 21%. Now it's up to 24%. He's 7th on the season in targets, averaging 9 per game. Then you add in the fact that every reception is packed to the brim with fantasy points. He's 4th in red zone targets, 1st in touchdowns with 14 on the season, number 1 in air yards, number 1 in deep targets, and top 10 in yards after the catch. So
unreal.
There isn't any more that you would want in a wide receiver than 2020 Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know he dealt with some injuries last year, but typically you don't think of Tyreek Hill as one of the most injury-prone guys either. He's for the most part stayed healthy over the course of his career. I mean, everyone deals with it here and there, getting a little nicked up. But the thing about Tyreek Hill, and probably half the reason I didn't give him the credit he deserves as like a top 3 fantasy wide receiver or a top 3 dynasty wide receiver, was he's just not built like what we think of as a prototypical alpha wide receiver one. You think about Megatron, you think about Julio Jones, Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins. These are big, huge, athletic guys that are fast, even DK Metcalf, that can kind of do it all. And for the longest time, we thought of Tyreek Hill as this small, fast, one-trick pony, but he is so much more than that, and he's proving it on the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm still kicking myself. I had a chance to buy Tyreek Hill earlier in the season in redraft for a couple of assets that were hot. I didn't do it, and that's something that would have absolutely turned my season around because I kind of discredited what Tyreek Hill was doing. So kicking myself for that one now. And if you have Tyreek Hill, obviously you're locking him in every single week. If it's any kind of keeper format, I can't imagine keeping anyone over Tyreek Hill unless you have like a CMC and Alvin Kamara or a Dalvin Cook on your roster. So the sky's the limit for Tyreek. He's tied to a great quarterback, and he's going to be one of those guys that could pop in these fantasy playoffs and single-handedly win you weeks like he probably did for you here in Week 12.
Next up on the schedule for Tyreek, he has Denver, Miami, New Orleans, Atlanta in Week 16 in the Fantasy Championship. You'd love to see that there. But all of those, you're starting him regardless of the matchup. Really, none of those scare me. Maybe New Orleans, but you're firing Tyreek Hill up every single week. No questions asked because he's an absolute stud.